Today's guest is someone whose energy and message truly embody the spirit of leadership through connection. Brian Biro is known as America's breakthrough speaker, a former corporate VP of a major transportation company, and a U.S. swimming coach. There's a combination you don't see every day. Brian has spent decades helping leaders and teams unlock their full potential through energy, engagement, and encouragement. Over the past 35 years, he's delivered more than 2,000 presentations around the world to over 1 million participants. With degrees from Stanford University, welcome to the ACC, by the way, the Atlantic Coast Conference, and UCLA, Brian has appeared on Good Morning America and CNN. He delivered the opening main stage presentation at the prestigious National Speakers Association Influence event to 750 of the world's finest speakers. I was not invited. Brian was recently honored as one of the top 10 interactive keynote speakers in North America and one of the top 50 motivational speakers in the world. He's also the author of 16 books, including Beyond Success, There Are No Overachievers, and his latest Lessons from the Legends. Today, we're focusing on the book, The ROI of Kindness, which he told me was a baby book, but I like that. It was really good, which explores how kindness isn't just the right thing to do. It's also the smartest thing you can do for your team, your customers, and your bottom line. In a world that often equates success with speed and pressure, Brian reminds us that kindness is not a soft skill, it's a superpower. Brian, it's an honor to have you here today. Welcome to the conversation.
Clint, it's a blessing to be with you. I'm excited to be with you, and you should get kudos for being able to do Brian Biro's bio that well without flubbing it up. I can't even do it.
It's a good one. You've done a lot in a very short period of time, because I think you're only 37, right?
You're getting big points right away.
Something like that. So speaking of superpowers, I like to think of all of my guests as superheroes, and all superheroes have an origin story. So what's yours? How did you get from where you are today to where you were?
I love that. I think that everyone is a leader. So we're right in alignment on that. We're all self-leaders. We're CEOs of our own life. We all have our superpowers. My mentor was the greatest, and my friend that wrote the foreword to my first book was John Wooden, the greatest basketball coach of all time, men's basketball coach. And he often said, there are no overachievers. And I love that. What he's saying is we got more in us than we know. So I've always loved people. That's really been that's the central theme of my life. I believe that there are no overachievers. I believe that we have so much in us that life is about trying to find the way to bring it out, to rise your potential. So I grew up in suburbia in Southern California. My dad was a LAPD. My mom worked as a receptionist at a pediatrician's office. I had the joy and privilege of going to Stanford University, which I still don't know how I got in, but somehow there's another Brian Biro who's really upset he never got in. But and like you, Clint, I had to pay my way through college, and so I coached and taught swimming. And when came to graduate, my buddies going to law school and business school and engineering school and med school. And I'd been lucky enough to do pretty well at Stanford, but I realized what I loved was coaching and what I had done in the summers. And so I started a little team in Southern California that over the next 8 years, that team was my life. And we became the largest private swimming team in the United States in those days, and had a blast. My team was top 2 in the junior nationals 4 years in a row, top 6 at senior nationals. I won United States Swimming National Coaching Excellence Award. 44 of my kids earned full college rides, full college scholarships. Wow. But I had no life. And that was the next move, next breakthrough part of my life. It was so all-encompassing. And I only knew myself as a coach. I didn't know myself outside of my work. And that's not the way I wanted to live. I had no family, no prospects of that. And so I'm probably the only guy, Clint, who went to graduate school to get a life instead of a job, which I did. I went to UCLA, got my MBA. That's when I met my wife. I got in really good physical shape. And I ended up going into my corporate career. That's the second of 3 careers. And I ended up becoming a vice president of a very large transportation company. And this, you're going to love this because it's about teams. Is that it was about people. And in my corporate career as vice president, I was noticing that we had these terrible silos. We had operations that hated sales, sales hated operations. They both hated the home office a little bit more. And this made no sense to me because all my athletic background was how each person brought something different to the table, that if we could make us come together, they say like mind. I think it's better to have like hearts. Like mind means you don't want everybody to think just like you do. You want people who have different ideas, different vision, different passions. So I started doing team building as a vice president of this company all through North America. And we had a massive turnaround, an incredible turnaround, nearly going out of business as a long established company to being the best in our field. And it wasn't because of the marketplace. It was because we started functioning as a real team where operations would never hold a meeting without sales present. And everybody started catching each other doing things right and contributing rather than always looking for what could go wrong. So at the peak of this incredible turnaround, I said to my wife, we're doing great. Let's quit because I got to go do this. This is what I was meant to do. And so that was, it was 36 years ago. And so that's how I got into doing what I do now with professional speaking, which I love. I do it for an unusual reason. Almost all speakers love to get the applause. They love to get, and I love it too. But the reason I do it is because I feel like I'm fulfilling what I was put on earth to do. And all I need is to do that, to feel alive and vibrant. And then I'm actually contributing what I was here to contribute. And that's all I need. That's why I love it. And I can't, I'll keep doing it as long as I don't have to bring 4 people with me, one on each side and one in front and back to hold me up. So I'm going to keep it going for as long as I can. So that's the trajectory through those different key elements in life. One, to learn, I don't say life balance, but life rhythm. People get messed up with life balance. And the reason is there's 48 hours of stuff to do every day and there's 24 hours to do it in. And we're not going to have equal time. But we can find a rhythm, and the rhythm comes when you make new choices. And really, that's the concrete strength of what I do, is about helping people make great choices.
That's amazing. And your second phase really resonates with me because I see the same thing about the silos. When I teach classes for big companies and there'll be 50 people in the room, all the engineers will sit together.
There's a great book about it right there.
Thank you. And there'll be a row, that's a column, there's nobody sitting in that row. And then there'll be another group of salespeople on the other side of the room, and they never intermingle. And it's because they don't speak the same language. They're uncomfortable speaking the other language. They don't really see the benefit, or they don't think the same way. So part of this is really getting people to work together as one cohesive unit, because if you're a for-profit company and if you're out there selling stuff that the engineers can't build, you're not going to make money. And if you're building things that salespeople can't sell, you're not making money. So
absolutely,
work together as a team.
And when you start to recognize that salespeople don't want to do operations, they certainly don't want to do administration. Operations people are in operations because they don't want to do sales. So we're each doing the thing that where our strength is, and we want to put our arms around them and say, thank you for helping me do what I love to do so you can do what you love to do. And as long as we've got a common direction, those differences, people use the word differences to say as if that's a bad thing. Differences are resources when we put them together. Resources that really allow us to, I don't want a team of people who are just like me, because we'll only see the narrow bit that I see. I want people who have great strengths in the areas that I don't. And when we put those together, that's when we become superhuman.
It is. There's a guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's a jazz musician from Brazil. And, they do, jazz can be improvisational, right? And so they asked him, well, how do you know what to play? He says, I listen to what they're playing and then I play what's missing. And to me, that's the essence of a team, is each person has to play their role, which is something that's not being done by the rest of the group.
Absolutely. And there's you hear as a swimming coach, people talk about swimming being an individual sport. You could not be more wrong. I used to feel it every day in practice when our kids work together, each with their own strength. When they work together, as honest to gosh, as if we had a massive current, a massive wave pushing them faster. And whenever we separated and we just got selfish and just focused on ourselves, it's like we had to turn and swim into that. So swimming that current, slowing us down. So every business is a team sport. And what we're trying to do is to get that wave, that current to drive us forward, which only comes when we care about each other and we recognize each other's contributions and roles. John Wooden was probably one of the greatest team builders of all time. For any listeners who don't know who John Wooden was, he coached UCLA basketball from 1948 to 1975. His teams at UCLA won 10 national championships in 12 years. Perspective, no other coach in men's histories won more than 5 in a career. Coach Wooden won 10 in 12 years, but talk about a humble man. He would have been the first to tell you he didn't win any in the first 27 years that he coached. And he used to say, it's what you learn after you know everything that makes the difference. But Coach Wooden, in his day, only played 7 players typically in games. He had 14 players on a team. That means half the team never got on the game floor. Their career was played on the practice floor, challenging the starters. And yet everyone on those teams felt important. Everyone on those teams felt they had a valuable role that was just as important as anybody else's. And that was because he understood the dynamics of, yes, everyone has something to bring to the table. He used to use the metaphor of a car. He said, he coached Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in case, okay, he's the engine, but guess what? An engine ain't going to do anything if you don't have wheels. And wheels might be, the third player. And he says, guess what? Those wheels will fall off without lug nuts. And those lug nuts may be those 7 guys who never got in. So the whole thing depends on each other.
So 7 players resonates with me. If you're of a certain age as a Georgia Tech fan, you remember Bobby Crimmins was our head coach when we did really well in men's basketball, and he only played about 6 players because he just didn't have he was comfortable with those 6 or 7, and that was it. The rest of them weren't getting in. So
yeah, that was it.
So you've written 16 books, and I will tell you the reason I picked this one was I was really drawn to the title, The ROI of Kindness, because those of us who doom scroll these days, and it feels like there's not a lot of kindness in the world. So I was really drawn to this, and then I'm glad I did because I really learned a lot out of it. What inspired you to write The ROI of Kindness?
Well, you kind of nailed it. I've had a good, long, joyous life, but in the last, I would say 10, 11 years, I've seen more animosity, separation. I've seen more demonization of people who disagree with us than I've ever seen in my life. And so the starting place was, I believe we need more kindness, that kindness is something that really makes a difference in every level, from being kind to yourself, to your family and your close friends, to your workplace, to your community, and to the world. So the starting place was, I believe that we need to focus on major elements of character again. Coach Wooden used to say, be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is who you are. Reputation, only what others think you are. And I believe that if you focus on those elements of character, that'll become your reputation sooner or later. They'll come together. So that was the starting place. The second place was I've spoken to about 2,000 different organizations, mostly companies. And I realized something. The ones that truly value kindness, the ones that really build it into their culture as a vital element, and not only in the way that we extend kindness to customers, but the way we extend kindness to one another in every direction. I started to notice they're the companies that excel. They're the companies that are more adaptable to change. They're the companies that have more loyal customers, and they seem to have less turnover. So that's what those 2 elements really drove me to write this book. Also, it's co-authored. My dear friend Mac Anderson is the co-author of the book. I actually wrote the book, but Mac was the one who designed those books. He had a company called Simple Truths that wrote several books of that kind of style. And Mac had created an organization called Inspire Kindness, coming from that same place. And we ended up getting together, say, let's get this book done. And so those were the driving forces. I had used it in my own career. I don't do a lot of consulting for organizations. I'm a professional speaker, but I did do a lot for a healthcare company called Kaiser Permanente, one of the biggest HMOs in the world. And I actually brought in an idea of, I did a whole bunch of interviews with a group within Kaiser Permanente that was not living up to the standards of the company. Their company is built on patient care, that everything mattered. One thing that matters is patient care. And they had one division, if you want to call it, that was just woefully below their standards. And so I interviewed them, and it came clear to me that kindness was what was lacking in that group. And we ended up calling it the 4 W's. And they had a transformational turnaround as they started to implement that into their culture. So I realized I wanted to say to everyone in this world, in the business world, kindness works. It's not just cool. It's not just nice. It works. It'll make your business more successful. And then I wanted to take it to an individual level to help people ask the question, sure, I want to be kind. What are the key elements that really drive complete kindness? And so we can make new choices in those areas.
So let's kind of dig into some semantics here. So what's the difference between being nice and being truly kind? Because I know there are people who will argue that some people are fake nice and not really nice. They're just doing it to act like they're friendly, but they're really not. So how do you differentiate between being nice and really being kind?
Well, I think the starting place is to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. Kindness really means that you can still stand up and be strong about the things that you believe, but you listen. All right. When you're being nice, and first of all, I don't say being nice is nice. I'm not going to take it away,
Yeah.
but it can be used manipulatively, and it can be used also to avoid tough subjects. It's a way to kind of keep those challenges at bay. But when you're kind, what you really do is you truly listen. You truly listen instead of just thinking about what you're going to say. And when we can disagree, and this is really, again, at the heart of this book, and my passion to bring it to people is we've lost that. When we make people who disagree with us evil because they have a different viewpoint, we're stopping humanity. We're stopping ourselves, because
Right.
if we only had people around us who actually always agree with us, we're not gonna grow. We're gonna be stuck in that and where we are. And so, to me, the real essential difference, and why would differentiate kindness and niceness, is kindness is still being able to stand strong and have strong viewpoints, but to learn to disagree without being disagreeable. So it's not a way to kind of protect yourself from challenge.
No, I think I totally agree with that. And you have a quote from Colin Powell in the book that I just absolutely adored, and so I wrote it here. Don't just show kindness in passing or to be courteous. Show it in depth, show it with passion, and expect nothing in return. And this is the big key for me. Kindness is not just about being nice. It's about recognizing another human being who deserves care and respect. And I think that's what you're saying is we can disagree. Doesn't mean I shouldn't dehumanize them just because we disagree. They deserve. I tell people all the time that I don't mute people that I don't agree with on my social media feeds because I want to know what their opinion is. Even if I don't agree with it, I know it matters to them and it's important to them, and they see it as a just cause. And so I need to recognize that, even if I disagree with them.
Yeah, and I think you hit a key word that is also tied into kindness, and that's respect. Is to respect that every human being has something that I don't have. They've had experiences that I didn't have. They learned things that I didn't learn in the same way that they learned them. They were raised differently. But when you get down to it, most people are good. Most people are really good. Most people want the same things. We want to be happy. We want to have our families have a better life than we did. We want to raise our children so that they can stand on their own 2 feet and live a great life. So that in itself, if we look for the things that we have in common, we develop a respect for people, a respect that says, I don't know more than you do. I may know things that you don't know, but you definitely know things that I don't know. What if we put that together? What if I learn
Yeah.
from you and you learn from me? But it requires respect to actually generate kindness. I've been, I'm not the biggest social media guy, but recently there have been things that have popped up from the 60s and from Robert Kennedy, from John Kennedy, from Martin Luther King, and then from the 60s from Barry Goldwater. So completely opposite politically between the Kennedys and Barry Goldwater. And yet when they spoke about each other, they didn't demonize each other. They disagreed, but they held that respect. I thought one of the greatest things I've ever seen was, and I know this is going to create some. I'm not really. I don't want to get into politics, but I thought it was really neat that when John McCain passed away, that he wanted Joe Biden to do the eulogy. This is before Joe Biden was the president. They were political opposites, political foes on almost every single area, but they respected each other. As they respected, the Kennedys, who were all, again, different than John McCain. That's, and I saw John McCain when there was the debate with Barack Obama. Somebody came up and started to talk about he's Muslim, he's this or that, and John McCain said, wait a minute, he's an American, and he's a good American. He wants to do the best he can, even though they were completely political opponents. That requires a level of respect. And with respect, we're on much more on the path to finding some common ground and to building connection.
Yeah, I saw something similar with McCain. I think it was a town hall, or maybe it was a debate, but I think it was a town hall, and some lady was saying that Obama's evil, and he said, listen, he's a good person. We don't agree on a lot of things, but he's a good person. And you don't see that today, where somebody will admit that the other side is not an evil person, even if their viewpoints are different than yours. So
that's right. That's why we wrote this book, because we can get that back. That starts at home. That starts with saying, when your kids are 9 and they're turning somebody into evil who is different than them, we can stop that. We can talk about it. We can really, help them understand. And I think all of us, here's a great example. In so many of my events, I ask a question to the groups. It talks about some of the prime areas we can be kind. I ask the question, how many of you in this room are married to somebody who, when you first met them, you couldn't stand them? And there's always people who raise their hands. That is a great indication that there's more to us than we first see. That first impression may not be accurate. We have to look for what's inside of people. There's a principle that's called the Pygmalion effect. And the Pygmalion effect is a vital key to any parent or any coach or anybody any leader, any manager who wants to really bring the best out in the people around them themselves. The Pygmalion effect says that our thoughts and our beliefs and our expectations are magnetic. That as we look at people, the way we see them is not only seeing them, we're actually pulling them towards the way we see them, especially the more influence we have on them, like a coach. So we're all Pygmalions. The only question is, what kind? Are you focusing to look for people's strengths? Or are you digging to find the weaknesses? Are you really trying to bring out the best in them? I had a high school counselor. His name was Mr. Anderson. I'll never forget him. When I was 15, he pulled me. He was the favorite guy of all the teachers. He was friendly. He was funny. Everybody loved him. He pulled me in, and he was my counselor too. And he brought me into his office one day, and he was serious. He was never serious. He always had a twinkle in his eye and a spark in his, smile in his face. And he crossed his arms and he looked down at me and he said, Brian, a student like you only comes along once every 10 or 15 years. Now, Clint, I got to tell you, when he said it, it's real likely he meant it bad more than he meant it good. Because at that time, all I cared about was I wanted people to like me. I was trying to win a popularity contest. I was a class clown. I was waiting to pounce with an inappropriate remark to get a laugh out of the crowd. And I was doing okay, but I wasn't trying my best. I didn't want to seem smart or anything. But Mr. Anderson saw through that. And the next words he said were perhaps the most powerful Pygmalion words I ever heard from anybody who influenced my life. He looked at me and he said, Brian, there's something special in you. Stop wasting it. He said, every day is a gift, but you're the only one who can open it. And son, you're not opening any of them. He says, each day you have a full tank to start with. If by the end of the day, that tank is still full, you wasted that day. Live your life without being afraid to be who you are. And it was only what he said. It was the way he said it. There was that powerful Pygmalion effect. And here's the power of that we all have as parents, to really start with that respect and that kindness and looking for the best in people. Had he not said those words, I never would have gotten into Stanford. I never would have applied myself so hard. Stanford led me to coaching. Coaching led me in a roundabout way to my wife and my children. That led me to doing this work I love, to this podcast. So the whole trajectory we have can be in what I call the woo, which is the window of opportunity, which is every precious moment. We never know when we might have that opportunity to help our kids believe in themselves and also to believe that they can be kind and that kindness works. So, that's at the heart of kindness too, is being a truly positive Pygmalion.
Now, when you think about this in a business context, there's this correlation that some of us draw that kindness is weakness. And obviously I disagree and you disagree. So why do you think people confuse those two where somebody who's kind is also weak?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with hype, with the hype and media and stuff that, we're supposed to be boastful and that humility, which is really a part of being kind, because with humility comes a hunger to learn, that it's weak, that it's not strong, that it's that you can't be kind. Here's the key: is people think that if you're overly kind or overly humble, that you can't be confident. Could not be further from the truth. You can be very humble and very confident, because being humble and being kind doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. But the real reason why being kind and humble is so important is only those who are humble are lifelong learners. Meaning, only those who are humble would much rather make a mistake and learn from it because they believe they can than to pretend they're always right. And so to me, that's where it comes in, is this perpetuated by, someone in sport where you can be sort of boastful, I'm the best. But I get excited by those in sport or in any realm, from government to business to entertainment to sport, who really give credit and take responsibility. And you'll only do that when you have respect for others and kindness. It doesn't mean you don't think you're the best at something. You can feel that way. But truly, I think that when you really come from a place of kindness, then you're absolutely have the ability to be just as strong or even stronger, because then you start to look around you at people in a way that says, you all have a gift that I can learn from. Let's learn together.
And I think from a selfish perspective, looking at that, you're going to have people that want to follow you if you're leading with kindness, as opposed to the other way, which they may say they may nod their head at all the right times, but as soon as they get a chance, they're going to bail on you, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's another one of my favorite quotes in that book. I bet you like this one too, on the basis of what you just said. It was from Bryant, the great football coach at Alabama before Saban, one of the greats of all time. And he says, I'm just an old country plowhand, but if I've learned one thing, if you want to get a team's heart to beat as one, he said, when things go great, they did it. Things go pretty good, we did it. Things go bad, I did it. And when you come from that place, people will respond to you. You will not create separation. People will respect you and honor you and want to be there more. In the business world, it'll create far less turnover. You'll have higher productivity because people know you care about them. And when you show that you genuinely care about them and you genuinely believe, I can't do this by myself. We all got to be in this together and everyone has something to contribute. That's when you get an unstoppable team.
Oh, for sure. And you're talking about, there's this mentality of I have to prove I'm the best. I don't make mistakes. Everything I do is right. We open this podcast every week with the George Bernard Shaw quote that says the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And the first chapter of your book is very similar. It says the greatest obstacle to discovering the truth is to believe you already know it. So if you think you already know everything, then of course I can't help you.
That's exactly right. And when you come from that place, again, one of the great quotes, and whoever comes from, I don't know, because I've heard it attributed to Harry Truman. I've heard it attributed to Coach Wooden. It says, it's amazing what's accomplished when nobody cares who gets the credit. And I say that credit is something you give, responsibility is something you take. And when you come from that place, it's a kindness. It's a way that makes people feel they really genuinely care about me. And when we feel that, there's a reciprocation. We want to give back. We want to give that kindness right back to them. And suddenly we start an upward spiral. It's awesome.
You by the way, that quote, I've actually seen that when I was at Coca-Cola back in the day when I was an employee in the rotunda. That was written actually on the wall. It's something like there's no limit to how high you can go as long as you don't care who gets the credit. So, awesome. That's kind of the deal. Now, you said that the future success of an organization really depends on its kindness. And there were some statistics in the book that kind of back that up. What does an ROI look like when you're talking about kindness inside of an organization?
Well, first of all, you're going to be, companies are measuring their results. So let's talk about that, a specific example, a Kaiser Permanente example I gave you. Kaiser Permanente actually turned around the entire organization. When I was a kid growing up in Southern California, which was where Kaiser started, they were a laughing stock. People used to say, "You go into Kaiser, but you don't come out." Not a good fit, not a good reputation in the healthcare
definitely
world.
not.
You know, over the last 15, 20 years, they're one of the highest rated healthcare companies of all. And the turnaround wasn't about who else they hired. It wasn't else about better quality medicines. It was patient care, which they extended. The patient is not just the person receiving treatment, it's their family. Because sometimes the patient is more concerned about the worries and the stress on the family than they are about their own ailments. So they measure that very, very carefully. They go to a great extent to try to get as accurate a measurement of the way that their patients feel they are cared for. So when I went to, this was actually kind of interesting because it was mother-child healthcare, the part of the organization that was falling behind, which always struck me funny because that's like the one happy place most of the time in a hospital is that, we're having a new baby. But they, at Kaiser Permanente, you had to be at least 85th percentile in their measurement system to be up to standard. And when I walked into this group that was struggling, they were in the 50s. And that's just remarkably below their standards. So as I said, the first step, and this is a great step in delivering kindness as a leader, and if you want to build the ROI to rise up, ask more than tell. All right. So the first thing I did wasn't to say, here's what we need to do, because I didn't really know. I had to listen to them. And so I talked to every different dimension, people from every different part of mother-child healthcare, and just ask them questions and then listen, not with any preconceived notions, just an open book to just truly listen. And what I found out was that, as I said, kindness was missing in specific areas. And I came up with this thing called the 4 Ws. And the 4 Ws, the first is called warmth. All right. Warmth is, very easy to give to warm people. And this is a real key to kindness. It's easy to be kind to kind people. All right. Natural. It's what kindness and warmth matters most is with people who are not at their best, who are not kind. If we can be warm to them, and that's what was missing. I saw that at Kaiser in this area, there was a lot of warmth for the nice people, but for the people that were struggling, and people are in pain there, people are scared, there are all the things that are going on. That needed to change. So the first W was warmth. These are elements of kindness. The second element was we, and that was a huge one. And that gets back to where there was separation between the shifts. There was separation between the different parts of mother-child healthcare. If we can't work together and bring kindness to one another, it's going to show to them as well. I'm freaking out and not remember my other W, but when you put those W's together, you remember, you read the book sooner than I have. I just wrote it. It's warmth, we, and I know it ends up being world-class. And that's the whole point of it. Is that when we bring warmth to people who aren't warm, when we bring that warmth to each other, the other one is welcome. And what welcome means that every single opportunity we have with a customer, with a client, with a teammate is a chance to make them feel welcome. And at Kaiser Permanente, what I found out was people felt none of that welcome. They felt like a number instead of a person. And so just even creating an environment that was more welcoming, making sure that every person they met at each place they went started by welcoming them with a smile, with an interest, with a full presence. And when you put welcome, warmth, and we together, you will be world-class. And as a result, you're going to be way more successful in terms of however you measure what your ROI is, whether it's in terms of sales, whether it's in terms of reduced turnover, whether it's in terms of customer satisfaction. Those are the prime areas that kindness absolutely elevates.
You give us some examples. I think Chick-fil-A comes to mind about how much better they do working less days in a week than McDonald's, let's say. And you attribute some of that to being kind, because that's part of their mantra is, basically to be kind to others. And I think it's almost 3 or 4 times the actual
it's
revenue.
unbelievable. unbelievable the revenue generated only 6 days a week versus 7 per unit, relative to anyone else in that industry, because they, perhaps more than anyone in the quick fast food service business, elevate in their corporate culture kindness to the top. And it shows everywhere you go. Why do you always see, and you're in Atlanta, you know for sure, if you go to Chick-fil-A, there's like a line 400 miles long. And how is that? I don't think it's necessarily because of the chicken. I think it's more because people feel good about being there, that they're always going to get treated with kindness. They're always going to get a warm greeting, a welcome. They're always going to be cared for. And when we feel cared for, we want to give it back. We create that upward reciprocation.
You know, they lean into it as well because they do commercials where they'll highlight that interaction between a customer and somebody inside the store that's done something nice, and they put them on a couch together and they talk about, hey, this is how you made me feel and this is what you did, and I really appreciate it. So they really lean into that.
They emphasize it, and that's the key, is that you got to emphasize it every day. Kindness isn't something you put up on a wall and say, this is one of our values, go back to work. You highlight it, you shine the light on when it happens. And I guarantee you that every Chick-fil-A employee and every Chick-fil-A customer, almost everyone, has a particular kindness story, has a particular story about Chick-fil-A, and it's not about the chicken. It's about somebody who was at the drive-through line, who just went the extra mile because they felt that was the proper thing to do, the right thing to do, the good thing to do. We all have those stories of where they know our name. How did they know my name? I only came here twice before. Or I forgot to take there's a story I tell in the book about somebody who forgot to take their $2.13 of change or whatever it was. And a week later they come back and they have it in an envelope plus a free lunch thing because they had kept that change. And what does that happen? Then that person who's been treated with such kindness, what do? They tell 500 people about how great they are. And suddenly your business is blooming.
Sure. So the next one is for those of us who always aspire to the C-suite, and maybe you haven't made it yet. You can be the chief kindness officer, right? There's your C-suite, and you highlight 7 habits of highly effective chief kindness officers. The first one was being fully present, and this is really a pet peeve of mine because nothing frustrates me more to be having a conversation with somebody in the room together, and then mid-sentence they pick up their phone and check it and they start typing. It's like, so suddenly whoever's on that phone is more valuable than I am. And I was right here sitting face to face with you. So I feel really dismissed and devalued then you come back and say, no, sorry, what were you saying? So apparently my time is it's okay to waste because I have to repeat what I just said in the first place. So being fully present really is something that's important.
Oh, it's the most important. To me, it's the number one of those 7 habits, borrowed from Stephen Covey, who's a great guy. The 7 habits of highly effective CKOs. You may not be the CEO, you may not end up being the COO or the CIO or the CFO, but you make a choice and you can instantly become the CKO, Chief Kindness Officer. No matter what your other titles are, it's maybe the best title you can have. And the foundation of all kindness is being fully present. It's so important because there is no trust without presence. You cannot help people feel significant without presence, right? And it is the most powerful communicator of all. And I want to commend you because, Clint, one thing you are on these podcasts for us as our guests, you're fully present. I see you just listening with everything you've got. So let's explain what that is. It's just so vital. In fact, none of the other 6 matter if the presence isn't there. Being fully present means when 100% of your mind, body, and spirit are with the people you're with where they are now. Now, all of us have been with somebody where we know their body's here, but the rest of them is in another county. And so for everybody listening, I'm going to ask you a tough question, but an important question. How does it make you feel when someone you wish to be present with you is not fully present with you? For some people, it makes them angry, but for most people, it makes them feel a little sad or small. But for everyone I've ever known, even the most confident people, if there's someone we really wish to be present with us right here, right now, and they're not fully present with us, it makes us feel worth less. It makes us feel insignificant and unimportant. And here's the gig, CKOs. Our job, I believe, as parents, as professionals in life, I believe our biggest job and most important job is to help the people that we lead, that we serve, that we love, to know they're important. Because when people feel important, they rise towards their potential. They rise to, oh yeah, I can do this. When people feel unimportant, they fall to, oh no, and they want to leave.
Yep.
But how do you do it? How do you do it in the first 30 seconds when you meet someone? How do you do it when you're working through difficult issues or you disagree? How do you do it with people who know your tricks and you can't fake them out? Well, it all comes down to the decision and the practice of being fully present. And I call being fully present the gift. And it's because the ultimate gift I ever received was given to me by my two daughters, Kelsey and Jenna, way back when they were only 8 and 3. And when they were 8 and 3, isn't it interesting? Our children teach us things. We had moved from the big city of Seattle, Washington, to a little town in the mountains of Montana called Hamilton, Montana. And the reason we moved was so that I'd be more fully present as a dad. See, I was teaching this, but I wasn't living it that well. I was so caught up in my world. I was on the road at that time about 20 days or more per month for speaking and for consulting. So we moved so that I'd be present for them. I'd be there on the few mornings each month when I was home to wake them up and get them ready for school, give my wife a break, take them to school, be there after school to help them with their homework, to take them to dance practice, be there at dinners with all of us for family dinners, be there at night to tuck them in and cuddle with them, be there to be present. That's why we moved. But have you ever known what to do, but you don't do what you know? And at that time, doing remote business, this was not possible in those days. There was no Zoom or Teams or Riverside. There were no cell phones. There was no text. There's hardly any email in those days. So doing remote business, which I was doing to many different time zones, you did on the phone, and the phone's plugged into walls. Get out of town.
Yeah.
Anyway, so every night, I was on my way to tuck my girls in, to be present with them. And I made the same mistake. I walked by my office door on the way to the room, and I saw on my desk that telephone. And I knew that in the short time I had run downstairs to get a bite to eat by myself, I totally missed all those opportunities in the day to be present with them, that I would have 5 new voicemails. So I got this thought. It's called an as soon as thought. It's the antithesis to being present. And I thought, hey, while the girls are brushing their teeth, getting their jammies on, laying out stuff for school tomorrow, I'll just pop in my office here, knock off a few voicemails. So tomorrow morning, there won't be so many to do. Then as soon as they're ready, I'll be there. Well, I see your little smile. I bet you already figured out what happened. An hour later, I finally put the phone down. I totally missed the opportunity to tuck the girls in. Carol had done it. They'd been present with them, my wife. And I remember so many nights, Clint, walking into the room in the dark, making my way to their bunk beds to give them each a kiss on the cheek they didn't even know they got. And as I walked out, I'd feel this intense remorse, like, tomorrow I'll do better. But it kept going on for days. It rolled into weeks, it turned into months, till one night, as I was reaching for the phone instead of tucking them in, my daughters came up to me and they looked at me with their innocent 8 and 3-year-old eyes. And they said, Daddy, we just want to know, do you love your phone more than you love us?
Terrible.
I felt the blade going deep. Emerson said, what you do screams so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying.
Yeah.
And I couldn't fake it. I was living my life as if my phone was a higher priority than my children. I tucked them in that night, and I never missed another night after that. The next morning, it was me who woke them up, made them breakfast, brought them to school, and my wife, Carol, was the happiest person on the planet because she's not a morning star. And I never missed another morning after that. But that day, I made a choice that we can all make to some degree in our life about presence. I made up my mind that never again would I ever book more than 7 speaking events in a month. I don't care what you pay me, I wouldn't do it. That I would be home at minimum 15 days a month. And that when I was home, my calendar would start with them. And I lived it. All the years they grew up after that, I never missed one of their dance performances. I never missed one of those daddy and daughter dances. I never missed one of their big school events. And I thought I was doing it for them. Here's the magic about being present. Your professional life will skyrocket every bit as much as your personal life with the decision to be more fully present. Because you don't get less done when you're present. You get way more done because you're fully there with full energy. So being fully present is the foundation of kindness, because here's why. What it says to every person when you're fully present, beyond words, but unequivocally. It says to them, you are important, you matter, and you count. And whenever you're not present, you speak louder. John Wooden, who's on my wall behind me, was the greatest coach of all time, in my opinion. And his greatest strength wasn't basketball X's and O's. It was being present. He made every person he was with feel like they were the legend. It was truly the way he was, because he listened instead of formulating his response. He paid attention to the little things, and he really made sure that he did the best he could to live his priorities. So I like to kind of bring this alive with a poem. It says, the past is history, the future a mystery. The gift is now. That's why we call it the present.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned that in the book as well. I love that one. Earlier we were talking about ROI, and there's another benefit. Not only is it maybe more profit per store, or like we were talking about with Chick-fil-A, but there's also, when you're kind in your organization, it leads to increased retention of your employees. And that, to me, that's always been a hidden cost. If you're in my world projects, if your project runs off 2 people, it's the cost of recruiting them, getting them trained. Again, I call it a hidden cost. It's not hidden, but nobody attributes that cost to their project, right? It's just something that HR has to go off and do now. But so there's benefits to being kind as well within the organization, because it helps you retain people that you want to retain.
Absolutely. And there's so many more costs to that than the obvious. I mean, what it does to the frustrating of the people who stay to feel like they have to, it's kind of like that, that Greek mythology of pushing the rock up to the top of the hill and then it falls back down again. And so it starts to take productivity away from the people who already aren't committed and being there because they feel frustrated. So yeah, organizations that emphasize kindness, one of the greatest areas of profitability comes from the reduced cost of added turnover. And it's not just new people, it's training them. It's doing all the things that go into the cost of each person that you bring in. Not to mention the things that you really can't measure, the momentum, the chemistry that you build. Just as in athletics, great teams have great chemistry, so it is in great projects, is that we start to understand each other's strengths and we start to create almost alchemy where we grow more and do more than we thought possible. Every time that you lose good people, and what is the number one reason why people leave organizations? It isn't about money. It's about not getting along with somebody. It's about feeling underappreciated and feeling, or that most often it has to do with your leader or your boss, that they don't appreciate me. They don't, I'm not thought of enough. I'm unimportant. So boy, kindness, every time we deliver kindness. And then there's another value we don't measure, and that is the ripple effect of kindness. So that when you acknowledge somebody for their effort and their energy, which is a great element of kindness. We've been conditioned in our culture to only give praise, give recognition, acknowledgement when the job's done, when the number's been hit, when the goal's been achieved. You want to keep doing that. You always want to really recognize great performance. But if you want to be a world-class CKO, then start to really acknowledge people for their effort, their energy, and their attitude before they get to the results. Why? Because now they're focusing on controlling their controllables, and that's how we create results. We don't get results by focusing on the result. We get it by focusing on what we put in to get to the result. John Wooden never said the words winning or losing to his players. 27 years at UCLA, the greatest of them all, never said winning or losing. Did he want to win? Oh yeah. But what he wanted everyone associated with UCLA basketball to focus on the things they controlled: their effort, their energy, their attitude, their hustle, their unselfishness. And he used to wink at you and say, if you do that, you're going to be pretty good. And the same is true in business. Same is true everywhere we go. So when you get a great acceleration of results comes from the contagiousness of kindness. It passes to the next and makes everyone feel more appreciated. Clint, as I said, I speak to organizations all over the world. And if there's one of the single most common worry that managers and CEOs and executives have, they know what's going on, is that their people don't feel appreciated. Bring kindness into your culture and there will be a feeling of appreciation that will be 360 degrees, not top down, not bottom up, but all of that.
Yeah, and another one of the 7 habits you talk about is live with gratitude. I think there's a principle of exaggeration that comes into play here. So what is that?
Yeah, the principle of first of all, I'm glad you brought up gratitude. A great thing that everybody can do to elevate their kindness every day. Wake up every morning, first thing, ask yourself, what am I truly grateful about today? You know, the word has a secret in it, especially if you're not really big on spelling. What you're grateful about has within the capacity, when you focus upon it, the power to make you grateful. What you're grateful about will make sure you're focused with your priorities, and they're your pathway to purpose. But um, gratitude is a frequency. Everything about human beings, as a Georgia Tech guy, you know, we're electrical beings. We have frequency. And there's a guy who wrote a book called Power versus Force that measured the frequency of emotions. The highest frequency emotion is gratitude. So truly, when we're in an attitude of gratitude, we can't feel angry, vicious, mean. All those are lower vibrations. We overpower it with gratitude. And so when you come from that place of gratitude, all right, it is an incredible, it is absolutely the most powerful ripple effect generator. So as you thank your teammates, as you appreciate them, as you become what I call a world-class buddy thanker, they take that in, they pass it to the next, and it keeps going until you've created an incredibly powerful organization built on appreciation and gratitude.
Yeah, I think that's so important to me because I think I read it's one of the most important. People just want to feel like they're appreciated. That's one of the most important things we need in nature. So it's important to be grateful and to appreciate other people as well.
Absolutely. And you start to really look around and acknowledge people for the right things. You know, two things we can do to be what I call world-class buddy thinkers, which is really living that aspect of a CKO. One is thank people with effort and energy. You know, oftentimes we thank people, we're not even there anymore. Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Gotta go. Doesn't mean anything. But when you smile at them, when you grab their hand with both your hands, when you really put some effort and energy into trying to communicate how you really appreciate them, it sticks. And again, when you thank people for their effort and energy, not just their results, they're going to start focusing on the things they do control, which will help them to create more results. So thank people looking for effort and energy. It's unstoppable, and you will really build appreciation in your organization.
It has to be genuine. It can't be disingenuous. You can't just check the box. You've got to really mean it because people can figure that out.
Absolutely. It's got to be genuine. And, you know, it's just like presents. You really can't fake it because they'll know it right away. But we talked earlier about the Pygmalion effect. There's a positive Pygmalion. What you focus on is what you create. So focus on looking for the people's strengths. Focus on when they do those things. All the years my daughters were growing up, every so often I would write them letters. I used it. That's another aspect of being a world-class buddy thanker appreciation is the power of surprise. So I'd write these letters not because it was their birthday, or I'd type them on a computer. I'd send them to them, put them in the mail. And on those days, I was stepping back to be a more positive Pygmalion, because why do we take the very people we love the most for granted? Well, often it's because of the heat of the moment communication we live in. It's like, why don't you get ready earlier? We're always rushing, and half the time we're late. Why don't you clean that room up? Fungus is growing. So in those days, I would step back to pay attention and look for where they have shown really neat things, where they've grown, where they were kind for no reason, when they were thoughtful and unselfish, when they were brave and courageous and tried to do something that they didn't know they were good enough to do. And the real reason I did it was because it felt so good. See, there's a payback to being grateful. It feels good to give. But I really didn't think my daughters gave a hoot. In fact, they thought, my dad is really weird. He types me these letters, he mails them to me, then he goes to the mailbox, gets the letter, and then he walks in my room and hands it to me. I got a weird dad, which is probably true. But on the last day that my youngest daughter, Jenna, was with us before she went off to college, we're in her room packing up and cleaning up. It's mass hysteria. I open up her desk drawer. There's all of my letters, all stacked up. The only thing in her life that's organized are those letters. And I realized that she couldn't look at her desk without getting a little anchor, a feeling of about all that I believed in her, how strong she was, how good she was. And my daughter went through a lot of tough things in her life after college with the young man that she was going to be married to was died from a drug overdose. Today, she is incredibly happy, incredibly strong, and it was hard. But I know that those acknowledgments, that appreciation, that gratitude for who she was, looking for what was good in her, helped her through the toughest time in life. And that's what gratitude can do. Coach Wooden used to say the two most beautiful words in English language when they're put together are simply thank you.
Yeah. Especially when they're meant.
They are. A powerful form of kindness is just saying thank you and meaning it.
You know, a resounding theme I've heard from you so far is another one of your keys, and that's listening. We were talking about the role listening plays in creating a culture of kindness. And I think one of the quotes is one of my favorite things I always talk about is God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should use them in that ratio. And you have the 2 ears and 1 mouth thing in your book. And then you give a great example about the head of customer service. And you did something that I don't think I could have done, which is, I'll let you tell the story, but to set it up, basically there was some friction between you and another person. And rather than avoid it, you actually took it head on and say, let me just come talk to you. And let me just listen to what you have to say, why you feel the way you feel. And then 15 minutes turned into an hour, and it worked out.
Yeah. It was actually when I was in my corporate career, I was vice president of what we call performance planning, and it was really marketing and sales. Next door to me was the vice president of operations, the COO. And we were as opposite of people as you could imagine. At least I thought we were. I'm always kind of looking for the possibility. And he was very analytical, looking at the problem to try to take it apart. And so those days, that's when we were siloed. I wonder why. Anyways, we never spent any time together unless we had to be in the same room at the same time. And then we do, as you talked about before, I'd be on this side, he'd be on this side. But I started really getting into this concept of being present and really listening. And I started to realize I didn't know anything about it. His office was next door to mine. There was just a wall, one little wall. It could have been the Great Wall of China between us. So one day, with no agenda, I just walked around the corner, went in his room, and did something I'd never done before. I asked instead of told. I asked him about his family. I looked around at the pictures on the wall that had been there all along, but I never paid any attention to them. And I saw him on a bike, and I realized, at that time I was running marathons, and he was a long distance bicyclist. And so we had that in common. I'd never even thought of that before. I just thought we were different, and that he was wrong and I was right. And so I asked some questions. The next thing you know, we talked for an hour. I had never spent 15 minutes with the man except in a room on opposite sides. When I left, I realized something. I realized, because we were different up until that point, I thought, he doesn't care as much as I do. I realized he cared every bit as much as I did. And we wanted the same things. We wanted a company to be successful so our people would be happy and well taken care of, and they could take care of their families. We wanted to like coming to work every day. Well, that was the turning point. From that day on, we never had a sales meeting without operations present. Operations would never have a meeting without sales present. And we turned it around. Probably the coolest thing of all, when I left that company to start speaking, he became the driving force between continuing that concept of teamwork. And we became friends for the rest of our life, even though we were very different. But our differences were power put together, each one bringing something that the other couldn't bring as well. And that only comes when you listen. And the difference was, up until that walk around the corner, I never really listened. If I was asking a question, I was doing one of two things. I was either thinking, I know the answer, and I'm thinking of my answer, or my answer, not his. Or two, I'm formulating what my response is going to be, my debate. In that room, I did what listening is. Take it in, absorb it, and then answer. And it'll come out, but it'll be much more connecting rather than separating.
That's great. I interviewed early on in my career Allison Wood Brooks from Harvard, and she has a term called boomer asking. Boomer asking is where I ask you a question only because I want to get it back in my court to talk about what I want to talk about. So it'd be like, so Brian, what'd you do this weekend? And as soon as I can, I'm like, well, here's what I did this weekend. And it's all about me, right? So what you're talking about is really opposite of boomer asking. You're actually asking the question, being fully present, listening to what's being told back to you, and truly understanding what you're hearing.
Absolutely. And today, I think more than ever, great leadership is more about questions than answers. Because when you ask questions of your team and you really listen, number one, you're going to know more about them. You're going to know how you can serve them better. You can know what works with them, what doesn't work with them. That's when any great leader or coach is looking for, how can I help you be the best you can be? Secondly, it makes them feel respected and honored. When you ask somebody in your organization what their thoughts are, what their solutions are, what their ideas are, how does it make them feel? Right away, they feel like, yeah, I'm important. I'm valued. I mean something here. And so you get that, they feel stronger and they're going to be better employees. And then two, you're going to learn perspectives you wouldn't have learned if you hadn't listened. So to be a truly great leader and to deliver a very powerful element of kindness is to be a master asker, to ask more than tell, then genuinely listen. And the other thing that asking more than tell does is it elevates energy. All right. People, when you ask people something that's important to them, and you see it in people's eyes, they light up, they start getting animated, they start moving differently. You ask them questions that align with something that's important to them, then you start to elevate the energy in your organization. You get people fired up and ready to thrive. So being a master asker is an unknown, but one of those highly important 7 habits of truly effective CKOs.
I think you tell the story, if I remember correctly, it's somebody in the organization you were managing asked a question about, I think like fishing. And so you had a book in your office on fishing and you went and got it and gave it to the person, and they became a top performer after that, because even though it was about something different, they saw that act of kindness and they really turned it around. You said the supervisor later said that this person became a superstar in the organization and ended up being a supervisor. They'd just been average before that.
We have a part of our brain back down here called the reticular activating system. I call it the RAS. And if you're going to be a master asker, that's to get your RAS in gear. Your RAS is a net-like group of cells that in effect, it's the brain spam filter. It works the same way as our email spam filter. And it's vital because there's so much stimuli in our world all around us all the time. If we didn't have some effective mechanism to block out most stimuli, we couldn't hold our focus. We couldn't concentrate. And the RAS lets in 2 things above all. It lets in what's of value to you and what's a threat. And it basically spams out the rest of it. So what's that got to do with questions? Well, when you ask about somebody on your team, what's most important to you about a team? What's the best team you've ever been a part of? How'd you feel to be a part of that team? You ask them for what they value and you listen. Your RAS gets in gear. And you'll be walking through the airport and it'll feel like somebody literally grabs your head and turns your head and pulls you into that bookstore because you saw the headline that said, "How Teams Triumph." And you go, "Oh, that's exactly what they were talking about when I asked them those questions." So the book was always there. You were always there. The person was always there. But the question allows you to get that reticular activating system to know what's important to that person and then to give it to them. And when you do that, watch out. They will soar to a whole new level because they are doing what they value. And the greatest power for energy in humanity is purpose. When we are filled with purpose, we are full of energy. When we get to do what we love to do, it doesn't matter how much sleep we had. It doesn't matter how we feel. We get to do what we love to do. We're like my grandchildren. Get out of the way. I can't wait. But when we're doing things with that we don't value, that's when we kind of pull back. So ask instead of tell. Find out what's important to people, what they value, and then make it available to them. And you'll be a hero, and everybody will do better.
When I tie that all back to the title of this podcast is called The Conversation. And what you're talking about is we're having a conversation by asking questions, understanding what you're telling me, listening, being present in the moment, taking it all in, understanding where you're coming from. And even if we disagree, understanding what you think has value to you. So the conversation is so important.
That's why you're doing great work. That's really it too. And you've done, I don't know how many of these podcasts, but many, 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 many of them. And you get all these different perspectives, and what you're doing, your RAS is in gear, and you're picking up those little nuggets that you feel are really of value, not just to your fans, but also to your family, to you. And that's the beauty of life, because again, as we go all full circle, everybody's got pearls to share.
Absolutely. And before we put a bow on the master asker, you mentioned in the book that the quality of your team is determined by the quality of the questions. So it's not just about asking questions, it's about asking good questions, the right questions, not just how's the weather. It's more than that.
It absolutely is. I talk about in the book, I believe that there's two kinds of questions that kind of made up. One are called enabling and the other are disabling. Enabling questions enable people to focus on the things they value. Disabling, and so they focus you on what you want. Help people get focused on what they want and for you to pay attention to what they want. Disabling questions, we all ask them questions like, why are you so X? Why can't you ever X? I used to say that being a master asker was only asking enabling questions. I've changed that. There is a time for questions that cause us to stand up and look at the consequences of not changing, of not learning. The key is the ratio. 5 enabling versus every 1 disabling at minimum. And always end on an enabling question, because that's the one that springboards into tomorrow. So those are the kinds of keys to asking the right kinds of questions. Sometimes somebody has to really face up to, if I don't do better at this, something bad's going to happen to the people I care about. And so I'm going to make this work now. Just don't do it all the time, or they're always looking for what's going to go wrong instead of what goes right.
Absolutely. So as you wrap up, I'm going to ask you 3 questions I ask everybody. Some of these you probably already answered, but I'll ask anyway. Are there any leadership principles that speak to you personally and guide your day-to-day behaviors?
I think the most important words I've ever written, they really encompass both the gratitude and presence. Most important words I've ever written say, the love we fail to share is the only pain we live with. And if we don't understand that, if we don't seize the window of opportunity, which is now, then the love you fail to share will be the only pain you leave with. And that's too late. And so what I want to suggest to everyone is that you have the opportunity to be more present. You're not going to be perfect. World is moving fast and there's stuff going on. Leave perfection to God, but make the decision to be more fully present. And that will be the biggest single inspiration you'll bring to the people that matter to you. And that being present is a form of delivering love, if you want to call it that. And to me, I'm called America's Breakthrough Speaker because ultimately I want to help people realize there's one breakthrough. They're all the same. You break through from fear to love. And when you understand that the love you fail to share is the only pain you live with, you're going to start look for that love inside, and it'll shine through to everybody that you touch.
Wow, that's hard to top that, but I'm going to ask the other 2 questions anyway. So what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, boy. I would say that it came from Coach Wooden. And Coach Wooden really did not believe in comparing yourself to other people. I think that he said that success is peace of mind that comes from knowing you've given the best of which you're capable. In other words, even though he was in a sport where the score is what gets reported in the paper, what he wanted was everyone to focus on what they put in. And when you let go of the need to compare yourself to know who you are, you'll become so much happier. You'll become easy to impress and hard to offend. And that is a remarkable recipe for really impacting people around you. So you don't need to compare yourself to have self-worth to other people. And when you just focus on doing the best of which you're capable in that moment, you can still learn from when you're not doing as well as you want, but you're also not becoming either, conceited or beaten down. You're on a path of continuous improvement, and you can realize the best I am today may not be as good as I was yesterday or tomorrow, but I'm going to keep at this, focusing on the things I do control instead of the things I don't control. And the reason comparison doesn't work, you don't control anybody else.
No. Yeah, I tell my son this, he's 18, he's a senior in high school. I tell him all the time, there's always going to be somebody faster, smarter, stronger, taller, richer, but you can be the best of all those things that you can be. So you'll be the best of Hammy. That's the best you can do.
That's a beautiful and important thing to remember. It was the turning point in my life when I shifted from a desire, a kind of a drive to have to be the best at whatever I did, which is goofy. It's all about comparison, to really finding fulfillment in seeking to be my best. The difference between the best, which is imperative, my best, which is about me, shifted my life and made me a better guy.
Oh, totally understand that. Last question. What is the best book or article you read recently, and what was the key takeaway?
Ooh, well, a great book is How Teams Triumph. I'll tell you that right now.
I appreciate that, but
I knew I'd love this show because I resonate so much with what you're saying about how we can turn silos into synergy. And I think that what it emphasizes in a very practical sense from the experience of all the project work you've done is that key that, where there are silos, there is no synergy. And that really you emphasize the importance of differences, of people with different values and different talents and expertise and passion. When we come together, that's when we grow. That's when we do things we wouldn't have thought possible when we started out. So I really, I think it's a great book to read to help people understand, because life is a project. So we're all project managers on our own project.
We are, absolutely. And I never expect you to say that, Sir Brian. Thank you very much for the shameless plug. I appreciate that. So this has really been great. If people want to learn more about you, engage with you, hire you as a speaker, how can they do that?
Simply just go to my website. It's brianbiro.com. And I made a fun kind of goal is that it took me almost 35 years to reach 1 million people in my live event speaking. And I turned 70 right after I reached 1 million people. And so my goal is to reach 1 million more by the time I reach 80. And so I love to bring energy and focus on the things we talked about to your organizations. And so just go to my website, and I'd love to hear from you.
I really appreciate your time today, Brian. Thank you so much for the conversation.
It was great, Clint. I really enjoyed it. You're doing great work. Keep it up.